Hello everyone and welcome back to the Football Tribe UG channel. Robert Kesakos is your usual suspect. Welcome back to yet another episode on your favorite football updates channel. It's always a pleasure to be here with you. So thank you so much to our new community members, the subscribers. We hope you do enjoy your stay with us here. Keep sharing, keep watching, commenting, and sharing our content and help us continue to grow. Anyways, today we'll be discussing those comments from Rio Ferdinand and Paul Scholes that did happen earlier on in the week that have caused a stir or a stir in the football world following Arsenal's defeat at the hands of Manchester United over the weekend. Two things, two different, sets of people, legendary people, former Manchester United players, all coming out to say basically Arsenal is the worst team. Paul Scholes in particular said that if Arsenal going to win the Premier League, this will be the worst ever team to win the Premier League. That it will be the weakest team to win the Premier League. He said, and I quote, "If Arsenal win the league, this could be the worst team to win the league. If you are thinking of picking a team of the season and picking the front four, nobody from Arsenal gets in that. A look at previous champions, Liverpool's forwards, brilliant, possibly only Saka, and I do not think he's been brilliant. He's not scored many goals this year or assists. And on the other side, because I want to combine the two, Rio Ferdinand said, Arsenal are so lucky this season because everybody is shit and inconsistent. And he goes on to say that Manchester City are in a transition. Liverpool are basically spent 450 million quid and then they've digressed. And then Chelsea are still building. Those were their words. Now, I do not want to disqualify each of their statements because there are some truths in the whole conversation or in the whole line, but there are also some points which I disagree with. Let's start with Paul Scholes. He is right that when you're building a team of the season, you could hardly fit any Arsenal forward in there. But let's be honest, it's been a bit of an odd season for forwards. Only 3 players in the Premier League after 23 match days have more than 10 goals. And that's brought Erling Haaland of Manchester City with 20 Premier League goals, Igor Thiago of Brentford with 16, and then Antoine Semenyo with 11 goals. The next in line is Dominic Calvert-Lewin with 9. But we're talking about 23 Premier League. Only 3 players have 10 goals or more in the Premier League this season. So it's been an odd season. Now, the factual truth is that Arsenal forwards have been far from good. They have been very inconsistent. When you look at Arsenal's top scorers in the Premier League, I think both have 5 goals each. That's Leandro Trossard and Victor Gyökeres. And next in there, you have a host of players with about 4 goals. Ebeleche Eze, Declan Rice, I think Mikel Merino. I do not know who else, So the honest bit is that if you are picking your, front 4 or front 3, as he says it, of course, you would say brought Erling Haaland, you'd say Antoine Semenyo, you say Igor Thiago. They deserve to be there because they banked in the goals. But look around elsewhere. Go to Liverpool. Do you have a player with 10 goals or more? No, you do not have. And yet Liverpool have the most expensive forward that there is. Hugo Ekitike, Mohamed Salah, Alexander Isak, Florian Wirtz, Cody Gakpo. None. Look at Chelsea. Joao Pedro, Liam Delap. Do they have 10 or more goals in the Premier League this season? Not yet. Look at Manchester United. Benjamin Sesko, Brian Mbeumo, Matthias Cunha, Bruno Fernandes. Do they have 10 goals or more? No. So, ordinarily or conclusively, you'd say it's been a bit of an odd season for forwards. Now, on the side of Arsenal, let's not forget one statistic, that while their forwards look very inconsistent and factually underperforming, they are the second highest scoring team in the Premier League, I think with about either 42 or 43 goals behind Manchester City, who have scored 47. Only 5 behind Manchester City, who are the highest goal scoring team in the Premier League. So where does that, put Arsenal? That means that while their forwards have not delivered, other departments have been relied upon to deliver the goals. Let's not forget Arsenal's model. Arsenal do use a model under Mikel Arteta of not having that star in the team. In other words, a player around whom the game is played around. They do play as a collective. Today, Saka will shine. Tomorrow, it will be Martinelli. On another day, it will be Leandro Trossard. On another day, it will be Mikel Merino, a Victor Gyökeres, or perhaps on a given day, a Martin Odegaard. So, hell, it could be Gabriel Magalhaes who pops up with the goals that win them the game. So, that's the context and model of the Arsenal. Are they the worst team? Would they be the worst team to win the Premier League? I certainly do not think so. In any case, and this adds to what Rio Ferdinand said, that Arsenal are so lucky, everybody shit and inconsistent. Now, I do agree that to win a Premier League title, you need luck. In addition to your hard work, to your all efforts, to your good talent, to your good team, you need luck. How do you need luck? You need luck with injuries, not to get many of them, or perhaps even none if possible in an ideal world, but being realistic, you always get some. You need luck in some decisions that should go your way. You need luck on, on how sometimes your games are arranged, especially when you have engagements in Europe or other domestic competitions. So you need all that to help you win a league title. So you need that bit of luck. But the question I want to put to Rio Ferdinand, does he mean to say that all teams in the UEFA Champions League are equally shit and inconsistent? Because at the end of the day, after 8 games played at the group stage or league phase format, Arsenal were at the summit of that UEFA Champions League. Now, another person would argue that they are at the summit of it because they've not played every big team in the competition. Yes, because it's not designed to be that way anyway. But they've beaten up against teams like Bayern Munich, teams like Inter Milan, teams like Atletico de Madrid. Unless you seem to suggest that even those are very small teams, or these are shit teams and very inconsistent. It couldn't be it couldn't be far from the truth, because Inter Milan are at the summit of the Italian Serie A. We know what Bayern Munich have been able to do in the German Bundesliga. Have since only lost 1 game in the Bundesliga, and that was against, I think, Augsburg over the weekend when they lost by 2-1, which was their first defeat this season in the German Bundesliga. So, dear Rio Ferdinand, when you say Arsenal been so shit and inconsistent, tell us, is that your common belief across board, or you're just equally getting carried away with the moment just because Man United battered them, 3-2 at the Emirates Stadium? Now, did Arsenal look great? No, they were poor on the day. We said just as much in the aftermath of that game. They did not look good. They did not bury. They looked, to be fatigued. They played as if they were under a lot of pressure and things like that. So they had a poor game, to sum it up. But for somebody to come and say that this could be the weakest team to win the Premier League title if they go on to win it, and I certainly disagree with that. At this stage in the season, and I stand to be corrected, I think Arsenal are only 3 points behind where Liverpool were at last season. And yet, we're seeing praise, at least in some respect, that Liverpool were so electric and so brilliant last season, which, by the way, as good as they look to be, I still believe that they are one of the underscoring teams when it comes to winning a Premier League title in recent times. Their point tally was 84 to win the Premier League title. Go back in the 5 years prior to that, and there's no team that won a Premier League title with that kind of points or less. Manchester City needed 89 to win it. In the 2022-2023 campaign, they needed 91 points to win it in the subsequent season, 2023-2024. So really, if we put all things into context, I disagree with Rio Ferdinand that Arsenal are so lucky by saying because others are inconsistent. Now, it is true that others are inconsistent. It is true that Manchester City are in a transition. But also, let's not forget, you create your own luck. Who would have imagined at the start of the season that Liverpool would be performing the way they are performing in the Premier League this season? I don't think any of us would have imagined that. Of course, circumstances around Chelsea, including a managerial change, have not helped much in their efforts. But I did not think that Chelsea would be in the kind of position they are in as we speak. Not that they are bad, but they've also been very inconsistent. So there's truthfulness in what he says, that other teams have been inconsistent, But like I said, it's been on roughly a bit of an odd season. When you look at the Premier League table, and until before match day, 23, I think Arsenal had the biggest point lead in terms of that table. When you look at teams next to each other, Arsenal had a 7-point lead, but next to that was Manchester City and Aston Villa, who are on equal points. Liverpool were I think about maybe also 7 points adrift. So when you look at the whole Premier League table, teams are so close. How many teams on that Premier League table have 33 points? That's between 8th place and 11th place. So the difference between a 12th placed team, actually you could lower it to 13th place AFC Bournemouth, and Fulham, who are 7th, is only 4 points. So you can see how close that gap is. So that's how the Premier League table is looked throughout the entire campaign. So, and I've also put this submission forward. I want somebody to help me understand or justify why Arsenal behave the way they behave, or they think underperform the way they underperform in the Premier League. And yet when they go in the UEFA Champions League, they look to be a different team. That game against Kairat Almaty, I think I was one of those who was disappointed with the final result, a 3-2 victory, because I thought Arsenal could have easily scored 7 or even 10 goals in that game. They were just not clinical. Missed chances, a couple of good efforts by the Kairat Almaty goalkeeper, and things like that. But you could see that they were playing electric football. And this, we're talking about an Arsenal side for whom Mikel Arteta made 11 changes from the team that played over the weekend against Man United. So in other words, Arsenal's B team had 25 attempts on goal against a UEFA Champions League opponent. Now, I do not want to over-exaggerate the size of Kairat Almaty, because in any case, they came bottom of the Premier League, of the UEFA Champions League standings. But they are still in the UEFA Champions League. When you look at some of their performances, beyond the results, they gave Real Madrid a headache. Yes, Real Madrid eventually won that fixture. But it's to say the UEFA Champions League has totally been different. In any case, go back to the comments of Anthony Gordon prior to their game against PSG when he was asked about the difference between the UEFA Champions League and the Premier League. And he said, in the UEFA Champions League, teams are more open. They come to play. They want to play some football. In sharp contrast, in the Premier League, teams are more conservative. They defend deep. They rely more on set pieces. The structure is more solid and compact. So to break it down is a bit difficult. So we know for a fact that Arsenal have been met with that same sort of challenge. Of course, they do have quality players that you would hope could rise to the occasion and break those barriers down. And yeah, there are certain points that you can point out to say here they've underperformed or they've not lived to the expectations. That's true. I do not demystify that, But overall, look at how teams approach their games against Arsenal. Any team that has approached Arsenal without that overly defensive mindset, they've conceded at least 3 or more goals in a game. Look at even Tottenham Hotspur, who decided to revert to a back 3 and play with wing backs, so that in defense they retreat to a back 5. They still conceded 4. You remember Nottingham Forest in the first leg when Ange Postecoglou had just taken over, they conceded 3. Remember against Leeds, they beat Leeds by 5-0. So remember Aston Villa at the Emirates Stadium, they won that game by 4-1. So for every team that has approached the game in the Premier League against Arsenal with the style similar to that of a Champions League team, they've gotten battered. But for all teams, for all the other teams, they've chosen to stay compact, to sit back and look to catch Arsenal in the break. Hell, Manchester City did that when they made the visit to the Emirates, and that's how they got a 1-1 draw. Arsenal even needed a late equalizer through Gabriel Martinelli to ensure that it took a point. Remember their victory against Crystal Palace? Only 1-0. Remember the 2-0 victory against West Ham United? We're talking about a West Ham United side that has literally been shipping in goals for fun throughout the entire course of the campaign. So why was that game different? Look at how Wolves approached their game, the Arsenal game, in which they lost by 2-1. Arsenal needing 2 own goals to win that fixture. Really, in comparison, how the Wolves side approached their game against Manchester United at Molineux, in which they got battered by 4-1. Same team, 2 different approaches because it's 2 different opponents. So teams in the Premier League are very aware of Arsenal's threat across the different departments of the pitch. So when they do approach them, win or lose, they go about it with caution. Win, lose, draw, they go about it with caution. They play in a very conservative manner. Look at Everton. Arsenal needed a penalty to win that game by 0-0. Victor Gyökeres, So it is true that Arsenal forwards have not covered themselves in glory in terms of their own performances this season, but also when you analyze beyond the headlines, beyond the mere surface of results, you'll see that Arsenal are not just lucky to be at the summit of the Premier League table, that they do deserve to be at the summit of the Premier League table. Do let me know what your thoughts are on those views in regards to the comments made by Paul Scholes and Rio Ferdinand of Manchester United, particularly in the wake of Arsenal's defeat to Man United at the Emirates Stadium on Sunday, which was their first defeat of the season. Thank you so much. Bye-bye for now. Stay blessed.